Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with another guest. And today we have Allie, who is in charge at Chugach Farm in the Chickaloon, Alaska. She spent her early years in Ohio on her parents' farm, shoveling manure, playing in the dirt, and observing her mother put up more tomatoes than anyone could eat in a lifetime. These formative years were not easy to wash off and helped nurture her intuitive passion for self-sufficiency. Since purchasing land in Alaska in 2002, Allie and her husband, Jed, have put their hearts, souls, blood, and a few tears into creating a small-scale off-grid homestead and farm. In 2010, with Jed's encouragement, Allie began to lead the charge in farming after deciding to produce on a different scale and committing to farming, nutrition, making ferments, and putting up food full-time. Chugach Farm has been in full operation since 2010, selling their goods at farmers markets, restaurants, on and off CSAs, CSF, local customers, and now direct marketing through the new Chugach Farm online store. And I'm assuming that CFF is community supported. Actually, you tell me.
Yeah, it's the community supported Ferments. So
Okay.
similar to a CSA program, that's what we do with our fermentation.
Very cool. Very cool. And so how does that work? Do they order off the website? Do they get to pick what they get, or they just get something every single week or once a month?
Yeah, the way you can do month by month or for the season, and it's a pint a week of a different ferment every week.
Very cool. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Yeah, so give us a little bit of an overview of your farming operation. It sounds like you do a lot there.
Yeah, it is a lot. We're a small scale diversified farm and using beyond organic practices, although we're not certified, raising vegetables, chickens, ducks, and pigs. And the chickens and ducks are for eggs.
Yep.
We're on about less than an acre in the forest. And we've cleared out a little area kind of within the forest, but once you get up in the mountains right above us, you can quickly see that we're still pretty much right in it. And
Mm-hmm.
we're on an esker on the side of basically between the Matanuska Glacier and the Chickaloon River. And we grow, besides vegetables, we also do medicinal and culinary herbs. I've also been studying herbalism for over 20 years. And we're all human-powered, off-grid, no tractors. The broad fork is our main tool. And growing it 61 degrees north with 20 hours of sunlight in the midnight sun, that's really the advantage we have here in being able to grow so much on such a small piece of land.
So when you say 20 hours of daylight, what does that do for things like arugula in the midsummer?
Actually, it's insane. Sometimes you can seed a crop and water it in, and we actually put IRT down to help germinate. And then once it germinates, we pull it off, and we can have a crop within 10 to 12 days. And after we go through and cut the first crop, we might have a second one within 1 week.
Wow.
Yeah,
So it's fast.
The turnaround is really fast.
Yeah. But now the other side of that is that it's very, very cold and dark in the wintertime.
Yes. And we actually, one of our structures, our main greenhouse, is everything around. All our structures are run off of wood heat, but our main greenhouse is built earthship style into the hill with a wood stove that has radiant heat throughout underneath all of the growing beds in there. And that greenhouse we angled, we have set basically for the sun at the lowest day of the year, which is November 17th. The sun goes behind the mountain, King Mountain, to our south for a couple months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. You don't have sun for a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, you've got like dusk, but we do not have direct light between for about 2 months, and then for a little bit on the ends of before and after. Um, you'll get some sunlight every day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's just hard to comprehend. So when we farmed in New York, we actually, the first year we rented some space from a friend over in Vermont, and he was on the north side of a mountain. And we didn't realize until we planted spinach, and literally the sun went behind a mountain. And obviously in Vermont's very different, but it was incredible to me, the difference between the spinach growing on our farm, which had, direct sunlight all winter long. But this farm literally only had a couple hours less just because it was behind that mountain. So I can't even imagine then. So during the wintertime, you're probably not producing food. It's more all storage crops, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And, it's not as cold as it used to be here. I mean, we used to have -30, -40 for
Mm,
some weeks in the winter. And we did have, -20 Fahrenheit for probably 6 weeks,
hmm.
or between 0 and 20 below for 6 weeks last winter. So yeah, we're not growing during those times,
Mm.
but we do, we can grow with our seed house and greenhouse and the hoop houses and our high tunnel. We have been able to plant out as early we start growing in the greenhouse in March, and then we plant out in the hoop houses by beginning of April. And I've still got a bunch of crops thriving right now, and it's beginning of October. So
Yeah.
season's definitely a lot longer than it used to be. I mean, honestly, 10 years ago, we farmed, June 1 through end of August, and that was the season.
Wow. That's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, we've easily got an extra 3 weeks on either end now.
Wow. Okay, so that means that you're doing an awful lot during the summer because, like, when we farmed in New York, we were a year-round farm, so we farmed 12 months out of the year, which really spread out the workload. So that means you're really concentrating everything. How do you handle that? Do you just have super organized, or?
I'd like to think I'm super organized. I am with certain things. I definitely do a lot of planning in the
Mhm.
winter, and do all my seed ordering in the winter, and the seed plan of what's going to go where, and the crop rotation plan and the cover crop plan. And so
Mhm.
that's all figured out in the winter. And then I kind of have a day by day what happens for March, April, and May,
Okay.
um, as long as things go well in terms of what's planted where, or what starts I'm starting,
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. And then come, June, July, August, September, that's pretty much usually I do that day by day, and that kind of revolves more around, the markets and selling and that sort of thing. But I try to plan as much as I can, but like, a lot of things get thrown your way that,
Mhm.
because we're not just farming, we're also, hunting and fishing and making ferments, and fixing the homestead, and increasing the solar array, and working on the wood stoves. It's just a
Mhm.
bunch of different things.
Absolutely. So, are there specific varieties for vegetables that you find work best in the short season or in the super cold?
Yeah, there are. I mean, I think some of the interesting things about Alaska being high altitude agriculture are that the crops develop carbohydrates that are converted to sugars at higher rates, making the vegetables larger and sweeter when they're harvested here.
Mm.
And it's so cool. The carrots can be up to 8 times sweeter than those harvested in other climates.
Wow. And that's because of the altitude and the amount of daylight?
Exactly.
Okay, so a combination of the two. So there's just no way we can do that unless, okay, very
Right.
interesting. Yeah, because I mean, like right now, actually, our carrots are super sweet because we've had several frosts now. And, but I'm trying to imagine 8 times that, and that would literally be candy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Very
And
cool.
but some of the other varieties that, with so much sun, of course, a lot of spinach varieties would bolt.
Yeah.
So we end up growing, it used to be Thai, now Avon, a lot of seeds from
Hmm.
Maine and New York. So these ones are from Fedco. But that I can do succession plants of spinach throughout the entire summer and not have anything bolt.
Hmm.
And in a typical summer, we also have cooler weather. So really, like cabbage storage number 4, that's our biggest keeper that we can keep for about a year in the root cellar. And uh, other things that Hawkeye turnips
Hmm.
are one of our favorites, and a lot of same varieties for broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, as up in the East Coast, but marathon broccoli.
Yeah, you can't
And
beat that one.
yeah, I think for onions, we definitely have to have a shorter day length, so 100-day or less, and that can be a challenge. So celery, onions, leeks, I start in the seed house with the wood stove in the middle of February so that they can be ready by now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yep.
Wow. Um, so with things being planted and they get larger, do you still sell it? How do you sell them? Do you sell by the pound? Do you have to split some things apart? Talk us through or does it just turn into ferments? Because the ferments sound amazing.
Yeah, that's actually, you made me think about a cabbage or a cauliflower that I had at market once, and it was like a 7-pound cauliflower.
Wow.
And
Yep.
yeah, it was like early on, in my market years, and I hadn't thought that, to me, I was like, well, this is amazing. It's a seven
Hmm.
pound cauliflower, but most of the customers it was, yeah, way
They didn't
too
want to
big.
pay
And
for that.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I remember when we had, I think it was probably a 3-pound cauliflower, and we thought we were amazing. And we $5 a pound. That's a $15
Yeah.
cauliflower, and of course,
Yep.
no one wanted to pay that.
Yep.
We ended up floretting a lot of our cauliflower, and then of course it could sell very easily.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so let's talk about the ferments because you've mentioned those a few times. The recipes, do you just develop them? Walk us through a little bit about like what does that look like?
Yeah, I have developed them over the years, and I've been doing the ferments for probably 15 years. And really, a lot of it is just kind of trial and error, and I get really excited about incorporating new ingredients. But I have some staples, like my classic crowd is cabbage and caraway, and then my kimchi is Napa cabbage from the
Hmm.
early crop, and peppers and onions and garlic and ginger and all that, and then I have a carrot kraut, and I do a carrot ginger ferment, and a cauli kraut, which is cauliflower and peppers and turmeric and cumin and coriander. So I have some staples, and then within that, I really, it's all about either what didn't sell that week, or what got too large, or just what extras there are. And it's been a fabulous way to utilize everything so that we have zero waste, turn it into a product that then is valuable, is sellable for a long time because of the storage, um,
Yeah.
and keep them in the root cellar, and yeah, it's and increase the nutrition of that actual product.
Hmm. So, are you producing that under like a cottage food law or just in your home kitchen? How is Alaska set up for that?
Yeah, exactly. Right now we do all of that under the cottage food permit, and that was a challenge. Alaska has pretty good cottage food laws for most of the state, but the city of Anchorage uh, was really challenging to work with years ago, and I worked with the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, and they helped me kind of navigate that. And I worked with the city of Anchorage and got them to change all their laws.
Awesome.
because it was really challenging for farmers, and I wanted to help encourage other people to, be able to do something else with their extra produce and to learn those skills. So now it's pretty easy. We apply for that permit, and then we have certain, a book that we file our pH and recipes and, water content. And so we've done that for a while, but honestly, our next step is to build a commercial kitchen. And hopefully in the next 5 years, we'll have a commercial kitchen that we can do classes in and make all the same products, but then anyone can sell them instead of it having to be me.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes so much easier. Okay, talk to me a little bit about the state of local food in Alaska, because I know you import so much.
Yeah, Alaska, the last study that was done, Alaska still imports 95% of their food.
Wow.
And it really seems crazy. My guess is maybe it's more like 85% now. Especially after COVID, it seems like everyone's growing food. But yeah, the state still imports a ton of food. And interestingly enough, Alaska still has the nation's highest percentage of beginning farmers, with 46% having less than 10 years of experience and 50% of them being women.
That's awesome. There's so many new ones, and women that are getting into it in Alaska. And why do you think that is?
I think that the word is out that if you can deal with the winters and you're hardy enough, that there's great soil around, and with the sunlight, that it's just a great place to grow food. And it's funny because down valley from us is where kind of the prized soils are in Palmer. That's where in the 1930s, during the New Deal, they tried to bring a bunch of Midwesterners up from Missouri to grow food and try to start an agriculture business in Alaska, and it totally failed because they didn't have it set up right. But that's also the same place now where our biggest thriving farms are.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then brand new farmers coming up. So that means the infrastructure needs to be there to support them. How is getting things into Alaska? I know, like, I talked to a lot of the greenhouse purveyors, and they were saying they bring them up by the container load.
Yeah. In terms of inputs and stuff that we can't get locally.
Yeah. And just like the greenhouses that they say they send so many to Alaska.
Yeah, and that was one of the huge, with the NRCS high tunnel grants, everyone started getting those. So that went gangbusters up here. And you're correct in that we ship anything we can't get locally for inputs for the farm or feed for animals or tunnels, we will ship up on the barge.
Yep, gotcha. And then how far away is that from where your farm is?
It's almost 2 hours. Hour and 45 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. It's really interesting because I was mentioning before we get on this call about the mushroom house that we're building right now and how it's almost done. Well, I've literally had 20 trips to the hardware store in the last couple of weeks building this thing. And I'm just trying to imagine, that aspect of, if I need something or supply, just having to wait so long and some of the stuff's quite specialty. So I know it probably wouldn't be local. But I'm sure like Amazon 2-day Prime doesn't exist.
No. And so in that sense, I am really organized. And I compound. So it's like, we'll do one order from Fertrell for amendments for the farm and animals that we can't get locally. And we do that in February, and that's everything for a year. And that's one order on the barge. And then we'll do one order. We actually get, we make all our own animal feed and mix everything, crack our grains and do all of that here. And we can get most of that locally, and that's in Delta. So that's like 4 hours northeast of us. And they drive through when we meet them here in Chickaloon. And so, but that's another, big order. that we do. And so we do like 3 or 4 of those and just concentrate it to avoid those multiple trips anywhere, because honestly, a lot of the quality stuff that we use, you can't get here. So
yeah, it's like the farmers that are in like some of the island nations, or in even not like New Zealand, just the challenges they have too.
Yeah.
But I would say an exponential aspect of that, just because of how cold and remote it is tough getting things up there.
Yeah. And that affects how you plan the farm out, right? Like I decided, okay, we're going to reduce our inputs, and really it was mostly local fish bone meal that we were using, but, we're cover cropping more and composting more. And so we've really reduced what we need to bring in to a small amount.
Okay. Now talk to us about the animal side of the operation, because you have pigs and you said chickens and that sort of thing. How do they fit into the overall farm plan?
Well, they are the fertility of the farm. And, I'm not sure that I thought about having all of them in the beginning, and now I can't imagine not having them. And so the pigs have helped clear, similar to like a Joel Salatin method on a really small scale. Actually, he was so excited he came here. I convinced him to come to a visit at our farm. And it was really cool. He was enamored by the forest and the potential with pigs.
I can imagine. Yes. We were super lucky years ago to have him visit our farm in New York. And that was fascinating, just to get him out and get him to see what was going on. So, but I can imagine now, because you're surrounded by that forest too.
Yeah. And so we've used, we move the pigs around different zones every year. They've cleared cottonwood trees. We'll cut the trees, and then they'll work out the roots and everything. So they've worked different zones, and so we have new growing areas because of them. And it's funny, it's way more fertile, and the soil is way deeper and better tilth than any other zone that we hand dug or used a tiller the first time. It's amazing the work that they've done.
Now, what is the forest comprised of up there?
It's mostly spruce, cottonwood, and birch.
Okay.
And then we have a lot of cranberry, high bush cranberry, and devil's club, and a bunch of different roots. But that's, and then, alder, and that's mostly what's in the forest where they are.
Gotcha. And so those are all softwoods, which means for firewood, that's what you're burning?
Yeah, well, birch is a hardwood when it's dry, but yeah, a lot of the spruce is already dead.
Okay.
And dried and dead, and we've been burning that for a while, and that's so we'll burn the spruce and the birch, and the cottonwood we usually mill. We have a chainsaw mill, and that's how we've basically created this whole homestead farm with so little inputs and so little money, is human power with a chainsaw mill.
Yeah, those are amazing, the amount of what you can get out of them.
But yeah, so the pigs are down there, they're doing their thing, rooting around, being the tillers and manure spreaders. And then the chickens, really the value of the chickens is they have a really nice insulated coop in the winter that they go into, and we have a deep litter method, and no additional heat, right? Because being off grid, it's not easy to just plug in something in the coop. And so that's been one of our goals over the years, is to try to figure out how to do more with less. And last winter it was minus 22 outside, and it was 47 degrees in the chicken coop.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So for the animals then, I'm assuming you're selling pork, you're selling the eggs, and then all that fertility is just going back into building the fertility system for the farm.
Exactly. And mostly building compost, and then the chickens, of course, are going into zones after crops are pulled out and or going to be left in silage tarped, and the ducks are really our slug patrol.
Mm-hmm. So, and the slugs up there, do you have a big problem with slugs, or not anymore because of the ducks?
It's better because of the ducks, but we had a pretty wet year this summer, so we still have quite a few slugs. We're definitely breeding more ducks for that, to take care of that, hopefully.
Yeah. Now, what other pests do you have up there?
Voles.
Okay. And how do you manage those? Because that is, I think, everyone's nemesis, especially in the wintertime.
Well, I've tried all of your ideas.
Okay.
And other than going out and like setting traps every day, which everything is not symmetrical here. I mean, it's just a lot of different zones and places to go to. But that's been one thing we've done. Of course, keeping, in certain zones between all the beds, we have like wood chips, and, so we don't have any, there aren't any weeds. So we've really kept pests out that way, has helped. But I think it's time for a cat, honestly. Yeah. I don't know what else to do at this point.
Well, also too, the small terrier dogs can do a very good job at that as well. Because they'll actually dig. Well, voles are usually on the surface. Moles are the ones that are in the ground, but voles will dig a little bit. And that's the thing about terriers, is they'll just go for them. So
yeah, the voles just ate the tops off of literally every storage carrot that we're about to pull.
Oh, yeah, that's no fun. That is no fun. Yeah. Can you get Agrid 3 up there?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing so for like sweet potatoes and fall carrots and beets, we would just take the, little square boxes, or like little like fishing like boxes, and drill the like 1 or 1.5 inch hole in either end, and then just put 3 or 4 blocks of the Agrid 3 bait in them. And then we would take a little white irrigation flag and tape it to the box so we could see where they were in the field. Right. And then literally once a week, you just go and replace the bait. And that works really, really well. You have to be careful because there's some that's OMRI listed and some that's not. I'm not sure what the difference is. Yeah. But that Agrid 3 it works really well.
We'll check it out.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about management of the farm. Obviously, it sounds like there's a ton to be done. How do you keep track of everything, and how do you make sure you vitalize the priorities every day?
Well, I'm a big list maker, and there's the early season stuff I mentioned that that I spend a lot of time organizing when it's dark and cold and there's a bunch of snow, and then really it's June is, we're planting the whole month of May. Mid-May to mid-June, usually a month where it takes us to get planted. And then from then on, the daily stuff is really revolves around the weekly schedule. Tuesday, Friday, harvests and pickups, or harvests and deliveries. And, so that means Monday's usually weeding and kind of assessing plant health. Tuesday, harvesting. Wednesday is either early season transplanting or, pulling a bed and putting another greens crop in, or mowing something down and silage tarping it. And then later in the season or mid-season, when, Wednesdays turn into fermenting or making value-added products. Thursdays are usually building, fixing things, working on systems. Friday, harvest again, Saturday, plants, Sunday, more of the same.
So now with the added light, do you feel like you work longer hours during the summer because of that?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I've been known, my husband he's usually yelling at me outside to come in at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
I'm not as bad about that anymore. I do try, but I'm still working, 8 to 8 every day, pretty much. But yeah, it's hard to not keep working when it's beautiful and light out, and yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. What would you say the hardest thing you've ever done as you've been building the farm has been?
Well, I thought about this. There are a lot of things, but I think one of the biggest things is killing the pigs every year.
Mm.
And, just, we raise them and care for them and love them, and then dispatch them. And I think that's hard because it's this constant recognition of life and death, or this yin and yang, and how you have to have one for the other. And it just brings up this reminder of what farming is. Whether you raise animals or vegetables, you're having an impact, and you're um, so it's an intense it's an intense responsibility, but
Hmm.
to be able to feed our community and ourselves for a whole year and have the benefits from the pigs, we honor that, and we value it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, how many pigs do you raise a year?
So we do 4 a year, and it might be more at some point, but that's kind of what our space
Hmm.
um, does, what we can do here. And then we do the whole process here. We do
Mm.
everything. So we're just actually, this past weekend, we just had our crew out, and we worked together to kill the pigs, um, and have and hang the first day, and then we teach people how to do all the cuts, and then we have a grinder set up, and then we do bone broth and render lard, and do cased sausage, and we're curing hams and hocks right now, and just made scrapple.
Hmm. Okay, so it's the full cycle, and which is awesome. Um, now I'm assuming you have a place to do that processing in.
We do, yeah. We've kind of developed all of the space and the tools and everything here at the farm. But that's kind of you either have to do one or the other, right? In a lot of states, but in Alaska, you either have it all farm and people buy pig shares, or
Hmm.
you have to take it to the slaughterhouse, which we don't subscribe to, and it's
Hmm.
probably going to be defunded by the state anyway.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's sad too, because then that means another way that you know are no longer the food security in Alaska keeps dropping.
Yeah, it's challenging. Pretty much most people butcher all their own animals because of it.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember we used to do our own pigs, and we just didn't have the setup. And so, staying out there on a 30 something degree day with some wind on your back is no fun way. So and the other thing is, because we were such a big vegetable farm, is any covered space was set up for vegetables. And
Hmm.
then to try to obviously start processing in them meant that you have to run into the food safety aspect of then cleaning everything very thoroughly and stuff. So
Yep.
we just ended up doing that off farm and paying someone to do it. But I mean, it was challenging, a couple hour drive. And all the things that you don't know how they're being cared for in those last hours of their life. You spent the entire time, making sure they live a good life. And then the last couple hours can be not great. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, who you've learned from over the years. Who have been your mentors?
Well, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast, and Elliot Coleman was speaking the other day, and Elliot's been here too, and I've hung out with him,
Oh,
and
very cool.
he is definitely, from like an early age, he was one of my mentors. And I think that's because we had a similar, we both kind of were drawn to the mountains. And, I
Hmm.
came to Alaska to be a mountain guide, and kind of for that wild nature, and to build a cabin off grid, and then farming kind of came after. And he had a similar path. And his was also a result of Helen and Scott Nearing and their book, Living the Good Life. And
Hmm.
that really stuck with me. I read that book, I think, in high school,
Hmm.
and it changed my world. And, from there are a lot of people, but of course, Joel Salatin has been a role model for me with a lot of his systems. And then more locally, Tom and Susie up at Calypso Farm in Esther, Alaska, and Emily Garrity down at Twitter Creek Gardens in Homer, Alaska. And we've all kind of collaborated on systems and, well, how do we do this a little differently and make it work? And I think all of those people combined have given me a lot of inspiration for, the challenges that are a little different for us being off grid, like with how do you run your fan system for your greenhouses and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And do you use DC fans or just low voltage, or how do you do that?
Yeah, they're DC fans, and all of the fans are, as close as possible to the actual structure, because then you don't have that line loss for the run. So, and then they have a solar panel right there. So as soon as the sun hits the panel, the fans turn on.
Aha, gotcha. If you could go back and reset your farm, for let's say starting from the beginning, what would be the main thing that you would change?
Probably symmetry with bed size and length instead of, we have some original raised permanent beds and then some terraced beds on a hill. And then we finally went to the symmetry of, 30-inch wide beds, 85 feet long, with a foot or 16-inch walkway. So probably that symmetry would have saved time and energy, even though our land doesn't necessarily allow all of that. And then the other thing would probably be introduction of small scale tools a little sooner, like a wheel hoe and the tilter.
Yeah. So you said 85 foot long for your beds, right?
Yep.
And why that specific length?
That's just the space we had on the property. 100 would have been great, but it kind of dropped off, and then we have a pond down there. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm always just interested in how people set up their farms differently. With that, I'd like to stop here and take a quick break. In a minute, we'll be back with Allie. Hey, thriving farmers, have you checked us out on YouTube lately? We have a bunch of new content there, including a few rants by me. I want to tell you, you don't want to miss them. I actually go rant about, some of the problems I see in our space and some of the challenges I see farmers facing. So go check that out. We've got instructional videos over there as well. Talk about setting up our new farm here in Ohio and all the steps we're going to do that, as well as just tutorials and tips on best practices for all sorts of things on the farm. So go ahead, check over at Growing Farmers on YouTube and see the new content we put together for you. Hey folks, we are back with Allie. Allie, talk to us a little bit about the labor aspect on your farm. I know your husband, Jed, farms somewhat with you, but kind of what is his role?
Yeah, his role, I think that, it's taken us some years to figure out what each of us wanted to do and what we're both best at. But he definitely focuses more on systems, and he sets up the water system in the spring and takes it down in the fall, and he does a lot with the solar system, and things don't work, he fixes that and adds panels and set up a solar system for the well, and does the electric fence for the pigs and the solar pond pump. And he's big with the pigs, the butchery of the pigs. He's really good with that aspect, and then some marketing and social media. And then he helps with day-to-day taking care of the animals and making the animal food.
Gotcha. So, and does he work, does he work off farm as well?
He does, but it's 2 months in the spring he's gone, and then a month in the summer. So there are blocks of time when I do everything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So do you have any other part-time help?
It changes year to year. We had an apprenticeship program for 8 years. That was awesome. And that didn't work out this year because of COVID. And we'd like to be able to hire someone else, but, being so small, it's, it's the same story, I think, with a lot of farms. A lot of times you end up doing it all yourself, but we're trying to figure out an arrangement to have a little more full-time help. But, I had help 1 day a week this year for one harvest day. And usually it's, help maybe 2 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And, my, kind of what I focus on then is the planning, seeding, transplanting, harvesting, washing, marketing, selling, delivering.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that marketing. Where do you sell your products?
Well, let's talk about, so the last 10 years, I went to Anchorage. So that's an hour and 45 minutes away, to this Bernard Farmers Market. And I started at that market. It was the only cooperative market at the time when I was getting into it, and it was affordable. It was in a good location, and that actually did really well for quite a while until a bunch of other markets popped up around town, and there's quite a bit more competition. But so I would go in, and I had a few CSA shares I would drop off along the way, go to actually drop off orders at the small plane airport to go to remote villages.
Oh, wow.
And then go to sell at market, deliver to my restaurants, and then come home.
That must have been a long day.
Yeah. So that exhausted me. And, as much as COVID has had its challenges, it was a good transition for us this year to our new online store.
Mm. Okay. So now what percentage of the product is going through that?
Well, so this year, both of my markets were canceled this year, and I lost all my restaurants. So, sales were already down 50% in the beginning of the year, basically. Mm. So we transitioned to all online, and then that was 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Would get, I worked with the company Barn to Door.
Okay.
Are you familiar with them?
Yeah. I've looked at some of their stuff.
Yeah. So, it has its benefits and drawbacks, probably like all of them.
Yeah. They all have a few quirks.
So. Yeah. I'd actually like to know more about like that aspect from you and people you talk to too. And it would be good to know what folks think of all those different platforms.
Yeah, that actually, one thing we've thought about is doing like a mini summit all around like moving your farm online, and basically like do deep dives into every single program, and look at some best practices and stuff, because there is so many new options out there. You just don't know where to turn. There's like a dozen different options now for farmers. Some, obviously very specific for farmers, but some more mainstream that can be adapted to farmers. So what do you choose? That's a great question.
Yeah, that would be great. And honestly, I really liked the transition. It was mellower. I think it has a lot of potential. If I could add back in the restaurants next year, I'd probably be, and 20 more customers, it'd probably be good. But so I like the fact that I'm only harvesting what's already sold.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at right now. Still have a couple more weeks, 1 or 2 more weeks, and then we'll be done with that for the year.
Okay. And then after that, do you sell it all, or because did you just cut off?
It'll be infrequent. I'll still have kombucha and the ferments and some value added stuff, but it'll be maybe around holidays or not too much more, because I actually transition into doing some avalanche forecaster work in the winter soon after that.
Okay, that sounds incredibly interesting. So not to go completely off topic, because that's not farming at all, but does that involve just a lot of hiking around up in the, or is it long range spotting?
Yeah, it's a lot of backcountry skiing, hiking up into the mountains and looking at the snow.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. So another thing that you said you sell is transplants. Talk to us about those.
So the transplants, and that's not a big part of the business. It could be. It's always been, I think if we opened up the farm to have a plant sale, it would work better. Transporting transplants is challenging. So that's what's
Yeah.
kept that side of the business kind of small. But we do all soil block starts, and we make wooden trays. So we'll go out and we'll cut a spruce tree down, mill it up, and then make wooden trays from that tree. And then in the greenhouse, early spring, we'll have a setup where we'll make the soil blocks. And and then usually I would take all the extra starts to market and sell them. I just put them on the store this year. And it's cool to see people's response to buying starts made in soil blocks versus plastic pots, and having them come back to me and say, wow, I've never had a celery plant that's done this well, or I've never had a broccoli plant that did this well. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. What are favorite varieties that folks like?
Well, most of them like the things that they don't want to start that early in the winter.
Gotcha. So leeks, onions, tomatoes, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But they also, Alaskans love their broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage. So those are also big hits.
Gotcha. And promotion. So how have you developed your customer base? I mean, it sounds like you're at the farmer's market, but when you moved to the online, did you have to do a bunch of scrambling, or how did that transition go?
Yeah, no, I totally scrambled. I was actually hoping that it would be this easy transition of, hey, all my customers from market, I'm not doing it. This is what I'm doing instead. And turns out some people can choose to change their habits, but a lot of people struggle with it. And so we're still working on that. And there were also issues with the platform I was using, which I wasn't always aware of at the time. Like, oh, the reminder emails didn't go out.
Oh,
To order, but you didn't tell me. And I had stuff like that happened a bunch. So that was super frustrating. My husband, Jed, he does the, Facebook and Instagram. And I think it kind of peters out towards the end of the season, but he's a really good photographer. And so I think he captures, people that way. But I would say that is a really challenging aspect of living rural like we do. And honestly, when I ask new customers how they found out about us, almost everyone says, mouth to mouth, someone told me about you. It's not actually Facebook, or, once in a while I saw something on Instagram, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So let's talk about beginning farmers, because you've been farming now for a while in a very harsh and unforgiving climate. What would you say one of the mistakes beginning farmers make is?
One of the mistakes I've seen time and time again is folks not knowing seasonal growing techniques. So they don't know when to put their crops out, and they put them out too early and they freeze. Or they grow the wrong varieties of crops. Like a spinach, someone says, my spinach keeps bolting, and it's because you can't grow most spinach up here in the summer. You have, because of the light. So those sorts of things, it seem like inherent knowledge of, you need to be connected with another farmer who has grown up here and can share that knowledge.
A mentor farmer, or like a coach.
Yeah.
And so what do you just say that they should avoid their first year?
I mean, I know maybe it's not practical, but I think if you can avoid feeling pressure to have big production and instead focus on soil health and fertility and weed management, easy to say now looking back, right?
Yeah.
But it just makes such a difference. And I think once you get going, growing crops, it's hard to take that time or pull something out of production to, to deal with it. But boy, is it worth it.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of the approach we've taken with our new farm, is that literally we've got a couple dozen pounds of spinach and beans and carrots and beets, which, we're eating, but some of them are going to go to waste just because we just did trial this year with the understanding that we weren't going to plan on selling any of it, and just so we could learn the soils.
Yep.
And I learned I've got incredibly horrible creeping Charlie out there. I mean, like just bad, which is good to know that now, because it is it's a fall annual weed. So that notes that in the fall next year that I have to be very careful about how I manage it. But yeah, it's good to know that now, and not when I'm trying to do 2 to 3 acres of fall crops.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and it's tough to know that I'm going to be tilling under some of that crop and it's not going to be eaten, but it's also, you're right, don't want to overwhelm yourself, because otherwise you're just running ragged.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot more experimenting with, I don't have flail mower, but I use my weed whacker. And so after, say, an arugula crop, I'll weed whack it, silage tarp it. And in the heat of summer, oh man, it was totally gone in 12 days. And then, it was amazing. And so I did a lot more of that. Maybe with less sales this year, I had more time to experiment with that, but the soil is in such better shape. So yeah, that's really cool.
If you could pick one, what would be your favorite farming tool?
I'd say my chainsaw.
Okay.
And I know that that's not like direct, well, it is kind of directly related. Reason being, it's enabled us to live simply and create an amazing homestead and farm with few inputs.
Yeah.
And we've, cleared the trees to build the farm. We've used it to mill wood to build our seed house and our greenhouse and our sauna that we use to dry herbs and cure veggies and, cure potatoes and onions, and built the hoop houses and fencing. And so that's probably the one thing that we couldn't do without here.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I actually own a bandsaw mill, and because we don't have an unlimited supply of wood, we don't tend to use it as much. But it's still a very valuable resource. Now, I guess the big question is, are you a Husqvarna or steel?
Oh, steel for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we could continue this conversation. Otherwise I might have to ditch this recording.
Awesome.
Yeah, I actually, I remember, because when I was growing up, we had this little old home light, and eventually that died. And so I wanted to go get one. And I went up to talk to the guys that we used to buy lumber off of, and they took me over to their shed and showed me this beautiful gleaming line of steel chainsaws. And they said, "Yep, you just buy steel. That's all it is." And so that's where I am now. But I've definitely had some of the rivalry between even me and my siblings. They've gone and bought Husqvarnas, and I'm just,
Oh, that's funny.
Floored.
Yeah.
But that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, especially with yours, which is, you're doing a lot of different things, and because the supplies and getting those things are hard, being able to do some of your own resources is incredibly important, and wood is such an important resource.
Yeah. And I mean, otherwise, the broad fork and the, wheel hoe are our favorites too, but
yeah, wheel hoes are incredible.
Yeah.
So would you say that now is the best time to be starting a farm?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think any time is a good time to start a farm. Kind of depends on what your priorities are and what the land is like, and do you have to produce, or can you take some time and learn to understand what the land is like and the soil needs. And but yeah, in general, sure. Yeah. Now is a good time to start a farm. I think the biggest reason I support that, and I believe that, is I think that we all need to continue to connect with the land better and understand the interconnectedness of life and where our food comes from. So that is a great way to do it.
Where can people find out more about you?
They can go to chugachfarm.com. That's CHUGACH farm.com. And also find us on Facebook and Instagram.
And you want to spell that for folks? I know that people may have challenge with that.
Chugach Farm.
All right. Awesome. And is there anything you wish I had asked that I didn't?
Maybe about our food preservation system, the root cellar.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned that and I didn't. Yes. Tell us about the root cellar.
So the root cellar is really what enables us to run the business and put up a year's worth of food without any energy, and hands down the most valuable structure we have here. And if built properly, ours is north facing and well insulated, mostly with earth, and we will put cabbage, carrots, potatoes, or beets, apples, and a lot of our jars and ferments in there in the back room. And then we have a front room that's a little drier that we can put onions and garlic for a bit. And then onions and garlic move into the entry of the cabin. But yeah, the root cellar, the root cellar is amazing because it stays about 32 degrees in the winter and 40 in the summer, and it's always about 95% humidity.
Wow. Okay, so how many square feet?
Not big enough. It seemed huge when we built it, and we could have doubled it. It's the front room's about 6 by 6, and the back room is about 10 by 12.
Okay. And so that's basically just you dug a hole in the ground. It's a cement lined, or is it dirt floor?
Yeah, so it's an earth floor, and we poured a concrete footer, and then we built a block wall on that, and then we milled a bunch of wood and framed up basically the roof, and then we poured a 4.5-inch thick ceiling, and then put our vent pipes up through it, and then covered it with earth. And if you know the book Root Cellaring by Mike and Nancy Booble, it's basically just like that.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right here on the shelf. Yes, it's a great book. I remember reading that multiple times. Okay, so do you have active ventilation, or is it just whatever, or is it passive?
Yeah, so it's just passive, but if you do your vents properly, so one's flush with the ceiling in one corner and the other one comes down, 2 inches from the ground, you can put your hands up there and it's just moving.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's self-moving. So then in the summer, 40 degrees. Wow. Do you have permafrost up there?
It's pretty much gone.
Okay.
We do have a lot of frost heaving and a lot of movement with earthquakes and stuff, but not so much permafrost anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I remember Paul and Sandy, who were my mentors up in New York, they used to be able to run their root cellar through the winter time. And then it came to the point where they had to put in a huge cooling system just because it warmed up so much and it got so much more variable.
So last summer was extraordinarily hot and dry, and we had a lot of fires. It was a really wild summer for Alaska, and we had trouble with the root cellar, so getting too warm. So we might have to incorporate a heat pump for cooling that runs off of a solar panel at some point. And we'll just have, this year we put a lot more earth on top of it and did really well. So we'll see.
Gotcha. Very cool. Well, Allie, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting all about your farm and just the farming in Alaska. It's so cool. I'm glad I learned so much today. And the root cellar is really cool. I just wish we could do that down here, but it's just too warm for that. So we are thinking of putting in a climate battery in our greenhouse. So we'll let you know how that goes.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have a great rest of your day. And again, thanks for coming on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Michael.
Looking to start or grow your farm business? You need a compelling farm plan that you can share with investors, convince your significant other with, or just to give yourself peace of mind. We have created a new program called the Start Your Farm Intensive. In it, you'll learn how to develop your farm idea to make sure you take all the factors into consideration for your context and your climate. You'll learn how to craft a one-page business plan that helps clearly define your target customer and lay out the necessary characteristics of your business. You will understand the 3 financial documents that every farm needs to fill out to make sure you are making money. And we'll give you all that as templates too, so you have the templates to fill out for your farm business. We'll also go through funding, so where to go for funding for the various stages and parts of your business. Starting a farm is hard. Starting a farm without a proven plan is almost impossible. Join us today. Go to growingfarmers.com/start for more information. Now, what did past students have to say? Corey says, the exercises and spreadsheets helped me make the learning process easier and more real. Jenna says, I gained the support system and resources I needed for when I'm ready for the next step. And finally, the worksheets make you think out every aspect of the business step by step. Go ahead, join us today, growingfarmers.com/start. Hey, Thriving Farmers. Next week on the podcast, we have Marissa from Whippoorwill Farms, South Carolina. And Marissa is a new farmer, and they bought new land, 40 acres of pretty much dense, overgrown forest. And they've been developing it and with 5 or 6 different enterprises, everything from pigs to goats. They've got chickens and ducks. And so she shares her amazing energy of building the farm. They do some agritourism. They do on-farm camper stays. So some great ways to supplement your farm income. And just love her passion and everything she's got going on. You're going to enjoy my interview next week with Marissa. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.